Welcome to the fifth session of the school year from BISLN, our British and International School Library Network. In this session, Andy Homden, founder and CEO of Concilium, and I, Sally Flint, senior library consultant, come together to discuss the importance of primary library sessions in developing a love of reading and enhancing, of course, reading skills. We reflect on how creating a safe, joyful and inclusive environment can make a lasting difference, and we explore practical strategies for improving library behaviour and fostering a positive learning culture. We also look at how building a team approach to library management, one that involves both teachers and parents, as well as ourselves and students, can strengthen the impact of the library across the whole school. The session touches on the importance of a clear library curriculum and looks ahead to future sessions too, including how libraries support project-based learning and our upcoming pop-up questions and answers. We hope you enjoy it.
And it's great to have everyone here this morning, and I'm going to hand straight over to Sal to start the session. Thank you very much, Sal. Away you go.
Thank you, Andy, and it's good to see you all. It's really starting to put names to faces, and so it's lovely to spend time with you this morning. And hopefully we'll have a useful session. Some of it, I think you will be maybe thinking, yeah, we know this. It's a little bit like teaching grandma to suck eggs. But I'm thinking even, it's kind of good reminders. And sometimes when you then go into your school leaders and you're kind of trying to get them on side and share ideas, and hopefully some of the things that we revisit today will give you kind of that a few pointers when you head into your heads and so on as well. So let's crack on because we've got lots to do. Do, as Andy says, interrupt me, put messages in the chat, share your own ideas. I know from the emails we've been sharing that there are so many really sort of inspiring ideas out there from you all. So don't let me just gabble on, because you know what I'm like. Once I get started, I'll not stop unless you force me to. So let's crack on to the purpose of a primary library session. Well, we all know, don't we, that the main purpose of a library session is to develop a love of reading. And sometimes that kind of can get forgotten amongst everything else that's happening. So we need to be running sessions in a safe, and I would say in a safe and joyful environment. It needs to be an inclusive space in which we all share our enthusiasm for books. That's just super obvious. And then the other thing is, alongside that, to develop reading skills of our students. And we should probably acknowledge that not all librarians, I think they believe that that's part of what we do, it just happens automatically. But they don't necessarily think that's the main purpose of a library session, and I will come back to that. The sessions that kind of are more structured, they're instructional. The sessions where we link to phonics and comprehension and that kind of thing. So there's two main parts of a library session: developing love of reading and developing reading skills, because we want to make lifelong readers. As I say, we all know this, and we know why it matters as well. The more skilled our readers are, it helps them increase their vocab, their writing skills, their reading skills. But perhaps even more important for me, or maybe is it more important? I think so. It kind of helps our young people develop empathy, develop their understanding of the world. And from that, of course, they can better manage their own mental health and well-being. So not only are we supporting long-term academic achievement, we're supporting the whole child. And I think that's one of the strands I always come back to with library provision, that we're there to help children in every way we possibly can.
And just looking at this picture here, Sal, about a month ago, I went into an old people's home, which was a lovely experience. And just as we arrived and we were visiting a relative, a whole class of primary school children arrived at the old people's home. And they were gathered together by the helpers and the carers and with their teachers, and they were spread out amongst the old people, and there were a number of sitting areas and lounge areas. And as we walked around, all these young people, they must have been year 6 or year 5, I reckon. they were reading with the old people. They were playing games, and the old people were teaching them how to play traditional board games.
Oh,
And
that's
they were
lovely.
sharing stories and everything. So this picture, is really brought that home to me about the lifelong skills that you guys teach and value. And I thought, whoa, what a great thing. And clearly, at the old people's home, there was a set of games and books and so on that the school had organized to be there so they could share with the old people. And I thought it just summed it all up.
That is a lovely story. Thank you for sharing that, Andy. It's wonderful. Um, yeah, that's really heartwarming, isn't it, on a Thursday morning to hear.
I, I,
So,
I just loved it. And there was nothing forced about this. The kids were really enjoying it. And the residents of the old people's home were really enjoying it as
yeah, I
well.
bet.
It took all our sort of self-discipline not to get involved and join in.
I
But we were
bet.
just sort of walking around and seeing and visiting. So we just let them
Yeah.
get on with it. But
Oh, what a great idea.
it was
Love
just a
that.
lovely, lovely session. It was the local primary school, and they clearly did this every week with a different class.
Wow, cool. So just to go back to acknowledging that kind of issue of whether librarians should really be leading on reading development or whether we should be supporting reading development as part of our regular library sessions. And there is such a lot of debate about it because I mean I'm very much in the camp that kind of libraries should be about joy, about fun, about pleasure. But that's not to say that I don't also think that there's a place for instruction within there. Because I strongly believe that, struggling readers do need that structured support, and we're another tool, if you like, in the education toolkit, which can assist with that. So I'm all about balance, really. I think we can have the fun, we can have the pleasure, we can make the kids love the book, but we can still offer some structured support. So that's just where I stand on it. I don't know if anyone else has got really strong views. Uh, I know I've got some colleagues who are very much like, well, it's not the librarian's job to teach reading. And I hear that, but I think they can go hand in hand.
And I think we're very interested, Sal, in what other people think about this as well, and
Mhm.
what roles they're expected to play with regard to reading, and uh, what they feel comfortable with regard to reading, and what's worked for them, and what's been a bit difficult. So please put comments in the chat box, and we'll try and pull in those views as we go through.
Yeah, that would be great. So, but of course, as I've said several times already, we do want to develop a love of reading. In many schools, the kids come to a regular class once a week, and there's lots that we can be doing in those sessions to make them really fun, to make the kids absolutely passionate about coming. Um, so I think, again, it's kind of obvious, but if we make those sessions fun and the kids are enjoying them, then they want to come to the libraries and then they're going to learn to love books and reading. So a few ideas. I'll start with a few ideas of how we can do that, and maybe you can chip in if you've got some more. So I think one thing we can do is give the students the ownership of their book choices. By all means, let's guide them a little bit, but let them have the choice of what they want to take home, what they want to read. So I would say fun, ownership, be welcoming, and that comes in how you arrange your library. So it doesn't mean you have to kind of have the really fancy library, but you can still develop your quiet nooks and corners where the kids can go and sort of spend special time. It could be, I was thinking about it in the night actually, because it's the kind of thing I do. Uh, I kind of had this vision in my head of the kids under little tents and making their own little areas of the library and almost out of cardboard boxes and things, anything that makes it a special little den for them. Uh, so long as it's well managed, and I'll come to that as well.
Yeah, I think the last couple of slides, Sal, this one and the one before, just shows you the importance of creating those little areas. I mean, this one is obviously about an early years kind of role play area, which can really bring out the meaning of whatever the theme is going on in some of the early years classes. And there's no reason why libraries, in my view, and I've seen some great ones, shouldn't have developed little role play areas to support the themes that are going on in the early years.
Yeah,
And just going, this is
100%.
a bit more flash, this one, but that idea of different kinds of spaces that can be incorporated into the library design. And we've got 2 or 3 library designers in our group, and just creating that sense of safety that you talked about. Somehow that design just emphasizes that thing. Little nooks, little crannies, little corners.
Yeah, it's that next slide that you had up there is just adorable, isn't it? Of the little role-playing area. So you can make your little stages, and we had a doll's house that, you could link to all manner of things going on in the library. So yeah, definitely. I think that works really well. And also we need to kind of make reading social, and have discussions and do the book swaps. I know, I guess as you become an adult, you're more likely to sit and read a book quietly by yourself, yeah? And even in secondary school, perhaps. But still, if you think about it, how many adult book clubs there are, people do like to talk about their books. They like those discussions, they like to share. So, in the same way that you might have a little kind of show and tell time in your regular classroom, you could do that in the library as well, where the children present on their book, or they can do it in their small groups, whatever it takes, book swaps, discussion activities to make it fun. And linked to that, of course, is the displays, I would say. Displays that are useful, not displays that are wallpaper, because then you just don't they just blend into the background. So displays that, again, the visual aspect that the students own, they can put their reviews up, their recommendations, they can see what their teachers are reading, all that kind of thing, is all part of, if you like, the bigger picture of what happens in the library, that then we can kind of narrow into making the individual sessions really fun. Within that, reading passports, visiting authors, encouraging involvement from parents and teachers and so on. So I got loads more I could say about that, but does anyone else want to chip in?
Just saying that this picture, I think, shows how the kids can be made part of the preparation. It's not just the end product that I think the kids benefit from, but the process for preparing for things like displays which support their reading and gets them talking. And I've seen displays sort of leading to the library outside classrooms, which are all themed. And of course, you can't do this all on your own. You need the TA, your teaching assistant, your library assistant, your assistant librarians. It all needs to be part of a team process. But as you can see here with these kids, they're talking to each other, and they will then bring in, perhaps when their parents are visiting the school, they'll say, oh, yeah, this is what we put up. This is what we did. And this is the book and that was the book we were reading at home the other day.
Yeah.
So a social process that you emphasize, Sal, I think is really, really important. And I love it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, great. I'm just going to read through a list of ideas. Don't feel you have to write them all down, because we'll record this and we'll come back to them. So I just super quick. So more ideas of just making the library fun. So things like the storytelling and role play that Andy mentioned. Ideas of wrapping the books up in brown paper. So they're mystery books, ones to look back on. That's quite a fun thing to do. Book clubs, reading buddies, show and tell, using QR codes and other kinds of technology for scavenger hunts, creating bingo tasks that match what's going on, book reviews, kind of would you rather read this or would you rather read that book type discussions. And then also the idea of pairing struggling readers with book buddies and mentors. So yeah, loads and loads, but I know that time is of the essence. So
Perhaps we ought to explain, Sal, that you've already prepared a PDF handout that accompanies this slide presentation. So all those things will be there as well. So, it's coming your way soon.
hopefully, yeah, yeah, definitely. So if we just pop back to using the teachers and the TAs and everyone, I think it's really important for you to not feel that you shouldn't draw on teachers' expertise and knowledge when you are in the library. Yeah. So in the same way, in the classroom, if you've got students with additional needs of whatever kind, they would keep their one-on-one, then that should also be available in your library sessions. There is, I'm not sure if this is fair, perhaps occasionally times when it's like, right, library time. So the teachers think they've got an extra half an hour. The kids just plow into the library and the support isn't there. And I think it's kind of really important that you keep those expectations or outline them really clearly at the beginning of the year, what you would like from your teacher support. It's not kind of an extra free lesson. And what do you think? And do you think that's fair to say?
Well, I think in the context of differentiation, Sal, I think it's absolutely essential because if these individual kids are going to get the most out of a library visit, yeah, there's going to be some whole group time together. There's going to be group time, and then they're going to disperse, and then you're going to need, help and setting this up in advance. So I think it's totally fair, and it's part of I think making people feel, the teachers feel that they're part of the library as well, that it's a team effort.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that really is important. So it's kind of that communication thing that we talk about all the time. So kind of ask the teachers how you can support them and plan the cross-curricular sort of links together. And ask teachers to model the reading enthusiasm, get teachers from other year groups to come in and read to different students because then they can see everyone loving the reading. Same with parents, if you can get a rota going where parents come and read a short story, do keep it short because sometimes they're not as effective as you might hope. But getting the parents in is, the kids absolutely adore it to see their parents role modeling.
And I think it also goes back, Sal, to what you were saying right at the beginning of this year, these sessions, when you talked about planning your library year, because teachers are busy people, parents are busy people. And so if you can get them organized in advance, it's going to be much more effective and fair to them. So you've got high expectations, but you're going to help them realize those expectations as well.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing to do is, often the teachers or the parents or the TAs, they might not know the library layout. So it's worth kind of putting on sessions so that they know their way around the library. Obviously, it depends on the size of your library and how complex it is, but make sure that they kind of also know how everything's worked, what the routines are and how things operate. So when you get new teachers to a school, that is the perfect time to run a special library inset because they're kind of not set in their ways. They don't know anything else, so they're going to kind of buy into the enthusiastic and inviting library that you present to them.
That's a really good point. I really like that point because we used to sort of set up onboarding sessions for new teachers coming to the school. Now, hold my hand up. Did I actually make a point of including the library in that onboarding? I probably didn't as a head of school. So I think if you can get that as you're planning for the start of next year, find out who your new teachers are going to be, find out what they have said in their interviews about libraries, if anything. Get your heads of school to mention the library in the interviews so you get that going. And then make sure that you got your foot in the door when they come, when they all arrive, that they visit the library as part of their onboarding.
Yeah, it's kind of that inviting yourself to the party all over again, right from day one, before term even starts. So, there are general things that we can do to make reading really special for the children. But I don't know if you find that when they come, by the time they get here and they get their shoes off and, settled, sometimes the lesson's almost over and then they're just going again. And it's a disruption rather than a sort of really valuable um, I don't even want to say addition because it should just be part of everything. So, few tips for avoiding kind of time wasting because I just feel we have to value and treasure every single second. We've got those little kids in there. Because there's obviously the common problems of queuing time. You can see here there's only three, that's not too bad. But again, I'm guilty of it myself. You kind of have the 20 kids all lined up just stood there, chatting, being noisy when that can maybe be avoided. So try to waste sort of unnecessary queuing time and try and make sure that the browsing time, 'cause it's so important that the kids can browse the shelves and look around, but let's avoid making it a kind of free for all, just run around time. Let's make sure they are actually browsing. And I think a lot of that is by not having clear expectations from the off, really, that then we can reinforce again and again and again. It's kind of back to that, making sure the teachers and even you sometimes, not you people, but like myself, like what do I expect from these sessions? And if we're clear about it, then the kids will be.
Yeah, and they're going to get better at this, aren't they, Sal? Both the teachers and the kids. And if you can get them into it's like any organization of a class, if you can get them into a routine so that they know how they should be automatically behaving in the library, that they're
Yeah.
used to spreading out and being then pulled back into the middle and so on. A routine, establishing a routine might be part of the early years session, going over those routines, reinforcing those routines, and then you will be getting it down to a well-oiled machine during the course of the year.
Yeah, hopefully anyway. That's the idea. So little tips to help do that. Maybe stagger the checkouts. So different tables of children go up at one, a group at a time to check their books out. If there's self-checkouts, use those if it's appropriate, or if you value having a returns box, that's something to think about. Some kids will struggle to select books in the time available. So get to know who those students are and pre-select with them. Give them a smaller option, perhaps a smaller choice to pick from. As I said before, use your TAs to help students who need support, perhaps second language learners. Uh, and I think I also said, make sure you get the same help for the students with the additional needs as they'd have in the mainstream class. Use timers and signals, the little shakers and that to remind people it's time to get their books checked out. And yeah, like Andy's saying, invest time at the beginning and they will get better at knowing whether they have to take their shoes off and put them in the cupboards and so on. And just give them, I'm big on rewards. I know it's much better if things are kind of intrinsically developed and known, but I'm a bit of a one for extrinsic rewards as well.
I like to call it affirmation.
That's
Now,
much
I
better.
hate the word reward. I'm coming clean here, but affirming, which is a symbolic gesture to say, wow, I've noticed that. That is really great. You've learned it. However you do it, I don't regard that as a reward. I regard that as one person learning from another that you think they're doing a really nice thing or a good thing, or
Yeah.
they've learned something. So learn and affirm was always one of my mottos. And I think that's what it's all about.
Learn and affirm. There we go. We've heard it here first. I think that's excellent. I like that a lot. Um, but when you kind of helping them learn and affirm, get the students to make their own rules, brainstorm with them and then get them to create the posters or make little video clips. We used to always have a giant teddy bear that we filmed sharing the rules, going, that kind of is kind of like gimmicky, and you can do it if you've got time and the will, I suppose, but it's fun. They love the big teddy. It's kind of like a chair in the library, and then they see it behaving well. I forget the teddy's name. It's
I'll give you
gone.
another soundbite as well, if you like. So learn and
Learn and
affirm was
affirm.
one of them. One of my other ones was catch them doing it right. So if you've seen something, if you've seen some behavior that you've been trying to encourage in the library, and that's something that you want them to learn, a habit or an approach or whatever, and then you see them doing it of their own volition. So it has become internalized. So it's become intrinsic, because I believe that intrinsic behavior is not just automatic, it's learned. And if you catch them doing it right, you just notice it and say, it could be anything like just sort of a smile when you see them doing something lovely or right or in the routine. But a little bit of praise that's timed when you catch them doing it right, I think it builds that intrinsic motivation, which we all want, but as you say, Sal, is not automatic.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's two little phrases I'm going to write down after this session today.
And I've
So
learned it from other teachers. They're not mine. I'm just passing it on
yeah,
because that's what I've learned. But I found in my time really, really useful.
really works. Yeah,
And it applies to kids of all ages. You know, they love being affirmed that, oh, I've done it right. And as I say, it could be a smile, it could be, you know, just a small side word or whatever. But it needn't be anything, but it could be, you know, the teddy, it could be anything, really.
yeah, yeah, cool. So things that they need to do right, they need to know how to handle the books, look after, care for the books. They need to know how to use the different areas responsibly. So it says clear expectations for borrowing, handling, and returning. Um, we've talked about posters already. If you zone your library for sort of noisy and quieter areas, then that's another thing that they can model doing properly. So I would say do make, if you've got space, breakout spaces for students who might need to go to them for whatever reason. So yeah, I think what Andy's saying, it's just it feels to me almost like library etiquette, library behaviour, because it is separate to the regular day, just needs reinforcing even perhaps more than in the classroom where the teacher can just do it naturally all day long. So
And I
get
think
the support to do that.
doing it positively, so affirming good behavior and affirming what you want them to learn is so much more powerful in my view than waiting until they do something wrong and then telling them that they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
So if you can get them in the right mode early, I think that's great.
Yeah, definitely. Right, let's see what's coming up next then on our. Yes, so let's assume our students are all now really behaving perfectly. They're not tearing around the library, they're browsing and selecting books beautifully. So then part of our sessions, but also additionally to the sessions, we want the children to become very independent in their reading and making their reading choices. One thing I think is maybe worth mentioning is that, we've got our reading sessions, but also if there's time and staff to invite students back to the library, kind of as a treat, an affirmation, not sure, to kind of, let's say they love tractors or something, then they can come back and choose more books in between the weekly sessions so that it becomes kind of, not just a once a week tag on, it's there all the time. And that links to lunches and breaks as well, like really encourage the students in. I know there's a whole issue of managing them and staffing, but I think they're key times for really helping children develop their independence. Perhaps more academically, you can guide guide the children to choose a particular level of books. You can encourage them to have their own journals, their reading logs, and again getting them to talk to one another about their reading choices. So I guess if we get the children reading independently, choosing independently, and talking about their books independently, we know we're doing a good job within our actual sessions. And now here we've got the secret to planning a successful library session. So we're using secret as an acronym, really. I don't know. Does anyone want to share what you think the secret is? I mean, I don't think it is really a secret in some ways. It's just being warm, making it fun, making it a magical place. It's kind of respecting the students, respecting the books, having them respect the library staff and the books, and it's just a lovely big circle of coziness.
I think it's what you're doing, what you're describing here, Sal, is what I see going on in all good classrooms. It's you've created the culture, you've set the norms, you've set the what you're hoping to see, and you're affirming what you hope to see. And I was listening the other day to a fantastic lecture given by Sir Gareth Southgate, who was the former England football manager. And when he took over the England football team, he said, what I really wanted to do was to do 2 or 3 things. And they were nothing to do with football at all, but they were the things that he built on to make it a successful team. He said, identity. So you want your kids to identify with the library. He wanted them to identify with certain values to do with the football team and what he believed in. Connections, connect with each other, connect with people who you respect, and connect and bring that into the discussion, because you value it, we're going to value it as well. So if you see someone who's a wonderful reader, or your grandmother is a wonderful reader, bring that into the discussion. But
Yeah.
above all else, he said, culture. He said, we wanted to change the culture because there were too many negative influences in the England camp, and he wanted to make that a positive culture. And I think that's what you're talking about here. You're talking about creating a wonderful, positive culture that kids will come into and feel uplifted by. And that becomes a virtuous circle of a cultural experience. And I thought you're absolutely right, Sir Gareth. I'm listening to this. It was the David Dimbleby lecture on the BBC. You can find it on BBC website, I think. Worth listening to. And I thought at first this would be about football and tactics and everything. Nothing of the sort. I thought this is about the creation of an atmosphere for good learning, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah. Who'd have thought Sir Gareth, what's his name, would
Sir Gareth Southgate, yes,
would be involved in our planning a successful library session. We should let him know, really, that we've used his ideology.
I think we should write to him and say, well done, Sir Gareth. You've influenced us.
So if we just look at SECRET as an acronym, though, perhaps more literally within the sessions itself, I think if you just keep this in your mind when you're making your regular weekly library plans, it's no bad thing. So think about the structure of the session. You might choose to always have a regular structure. So you set the stage up for that, or you might sometimes go for a surprise start, so the kids, I think it's lovely when the kids don't get what they're expected in a way, once that's established. Always think about engagement, how they are going to be engaged in the learning, how they can do the exploring, try and be interactive, get them to be interactive with you. Think about choice. I think choice kind of links quite tightly to ownership, maybe. So create that independent reading time where they can choose their books. Have a routine where they can share and reflect, and so can you, so that there is that kind of continuity, and that they know their opinion, the children know their opinion's valued. And then both sometimes in the lesson itself, but also when you're reflecting afterwards, evaluate what went well. Connect with the children, connect with the teachers, and discuss those things. And then tie it into classroom learning. Actually, I could have probably said more about classroom learning and linking to the curriculum in other parts of what we've been talking about. But yeah, always sort of have the big picture in mind, I think, because that helps the smaller picture, but the important picture of the library. Okay, so your library curriculum content, because obviously this is going to be crucial to making your sessions work well. And it's a big topic. It's a topic in itself, really, to think about what you're going to put in your curriculum. I've created a list of what I would put in. Again, that will be in the handout, but it's going to depend on your school, where you're at, what the expectations are. There are some places to go, to get help with this. In the UK, I would go to greatschoollibraries.org. Again, we can share these. And then I would go, I never know how you say it. I'm just going to spell it CILIP. I never know if it's CILIP or KILIP. I think it's CILIP, which is a wonderful school libraries group anyway. So, and they've got examples of curriculums that you can use and adapt to your school. In the USA, I'd use the AASL standards. But really, it is a case of Googling. There's a lot of schools out there that have just shared their curriculums and then kind of reading through them and seeing what works for you. I would say, if we've got time, I'll just race through. In the early years, you must be including book handling and library behaviour, which we've talked about. Exploring the library and creating the rules. Story time and reading for pleasure cannot, in my opinion, be kind of, and I've done it myself, put to one side because you're trying to do too many other things. We've got to keep the basics and what is important. The kids should be able to know the basic differences between fiction and non-fiction. I'm talking about the little ones here. They should look at the power of illustrations and what they do as well as the words. And they should be able to use a library catalogue pretty early in whatever form that is. It might be as simple as a picture catalogue. I know when on Destiny, you can, as well as just kind of cataloguing the books with the words and the code, you can also do it by pictures, and that's a lovely thing to have the iPads out and the kids then searching for the books, matching the pictures in Destiny to the pictures that you've set up on your shelving. It's kind of an add-on. If you're really snowed under and you're working by yourself, it's a big job, but it is a lovely thing to do if you have got the staff. So they should be able to understand different genres. They should be able to make book choices, teach them about indexes, content pages. As they get a little bit older, I think, especially now, perhaps invest quite a lot of time about looking at what are reliable and unreliable sources, how to use the internet responsibly, plagiarism, that kind of thing. So they need to learn fact checking and that, skills like that, perhaps. They should be able to kind of have a strategy for approaching research projects. And these will be things that if you believe that reading is, if the library is not just for fun, that you will be working with, but do it with the teachers. Don't feel you just have to suddenly teach all these things independently, because I think the learning gets embedded that much better anyway if it is within a kind of framework that is going on in the classroom. But they should become confident at discussing books, recommending books, note taking, summarizing, and as I say, they should be able to be able to complete independent study and be able to approach research. So if you kind of get all those things done between years 1 and 6.
So
like that, eh?
I think what you've been talking about, Sal, and having looked at your resources in preparation for this this morning, this afternoon, I think you're talking about two things. And it's interesting that you've focused on the first thing and given it a lot of attention. You're talking about the culture of the library, developing that culture, developing an understanding of that culture through the experience that they have when they come into the library and making that culture positive, affirming, etc., etc. And a lot of effort, I think, is well spent in creating that culture. The second thing that we've talked about at the end is the content. Yes, the skills, there's the knowledge and so on. And that will make them more effective users of the library. And a word that I'm keen on that you've mentioned that sometimes gets a bad press in some schools is routine. I think routine, personally, I think routine is important. You need to have some things that they do without thinking because you want them to get to the point where they have time to devote to those things where they need to make choices. They need to think, they need to inquire, they need to think, oh, I'm not quite sure about this, I need to go further, and to research and to do those things that I think it's becoming an important part of the UK curriculum and has always been an important part of the things like the IB curriculum.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's kind of having that foundation, because with the routine, then you can have the fun and the learning.
And you get shorter queues and you get better use of time and all that sort of stuff. And
yeah,
you value it so much. And
so
there's, go on, carry on.
sorry, Andy. I was saying really what we're kind of saying, it's straightforward, but it's so important, and sometimes it can kind of get overlooked because we're just so kind of bogged down with everything else. Because I guess what as a librarian, kind of a thing you need to remember is this is all very student-centered, but in the background there'll be people, saying, why haven't you catalogued this set of books yet? And there's a delivery arrived that you're supposed to be ticking off at the back door of the library and so on. So yeah, I just think it's valuable to kind of rethink or just remind ourselves what it really is all about, which is the children, I think.
Absolutely. And before we sign off for this session, perhaps just let's look at what's coming up in term 3, which we are planning right now. And Sal, there's going to be a secondary equivalent to this session for the end of the month, isn't there?
Yes. And I think that will be an important one, because I think there is a danger actually in secondary that we move away from the fun almost. We've talked before in these sessions how there's the GCSE. Did somebody say it was like a desert of reading or something like that, wasn't it?
Yes.
So it's almost, in a way, in primary we focus a lot on fun and warmth and welcoming, and then we need to make sure we don't lose that in the secondary when we have to also include perhaps more rigorous teaching and instruction, perhaps.
Yeah, but not to lose the fun element. And
Yeah.
then I mean, part of my work over the years has been with growing schools, and what you've got is a lovely atmosphere in a primary school, and the parents and the board don't want to lose that lovely atmosphere as it grows into a secondary school. I've been involved with a couple of projects like that, and I think the same is true of libraries. You want that culture to become a secondary culture and relevant in the way it is to older kids who are going through the dreaded word now, adolescence, but to make it more serious and more fun at the same time. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And we talked about a number of things that we might be focusing on the pop-up questions and answers and so on. So if you have any issues that you would like us to focus on in the session on May the 14th, that would be great. Just send them in to Sal and to me, and we'll get them organised. And you've just mentioned, Sal, there, project-based learning and project learning and libraries. And that's going to become a focus in the 3rd session of the term.
Yeah, we're looking forward. We've got a new member called Pedro, and he's got quite a lot of knowledge and expertise, and he oversees the extended essay at IB level. So we'll be pulling him in for his ideas, and we'd love to know what you all think as well, and share any insights you've got.
So this is going to be something that I think is going to be relevant really relevant to IB schools, because inquiry and extended essays and so on, but is increasingly important to UK curriculum schools as well. Many schools do the EPQ, the extended project qualification, and we've just been joined by what I think is quite an important school in the UK called Cranley. And the director of learning there is a guy called John Taylor, Dr. John Taylor. He was the guy who designed the EPQ about 10 years ago. And now he'll have news of the development of project-based learning, not only for sort of year 12 and 13, grades 11 and 12, but also for grades 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because there are new sort of projects initiatives going on in UK and UK international schools that I think the library is going to be at the very centre of. So I'm looking forward to joining Pedro and John in that session. Pedro, by the way, is at Markham College, one of the most important schools in South America, in Peru, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah. So they'll be good. We've got some good sessions coming up, so I'm looking forward to those.
Spread the word, get on our socials, contact us with your ideas. Don't hesitate to contact Sal, and we're looking forward to the term break coming up, the Easter holidays, the post-Eid, and Salamat Hari Raya to everybody, and Eid Mubarak to everyone who celebrates Eid. I hope you had a great time, and we're looking forward to term 3.
That's our chapter on primary libraries for now. As Andy mentions in this recording, our network is growing and we're always keen that you spread the word. So thanks for that. We've got some really exciting term 3 sessions coming up. At the end of April, we've got our next pop-up networking session. So look out for the link very soon. And then on Wednesday, May the 14th, we're looking at effective library sessions for secondary, building on today's ideas, but for those tricky years. And then at the beginning of June, we'll be looking at project-based learning and the library. As always, we're live at 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock UK times for all those sessions. So thanks for joining us, and as always, enjoy your library space. Take care.